Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers here at Campaign for America. John McCann is off tonight. He will be joining us next week. Well, we certainly have a lot to talk about. A lot's been going on around the country and around the world, and we like to keep you informed as to what is actually going on based on facts, not on emotion, based on credible, actionable information. And that's what we like to do, is share these things with you so that you can do something, perhaps even in your neighborhood from your house, with regard to any issue affecting our quality of life. Well, let's begin with this, folks. Let's begin with the Rittenhouse trial. I'm sure all of us have been glued to our TVs, have been listening on the radio, have been looking at all of the media coverage over the trial that is now taking place in Wisconsin. And I have concluded, folks, based on my experience in law enforcement, based on watching a lot of courtroom testimony throughout the 38 years that I have been involved in law enforcement, that Mr. Rittenhouse is not guilty. That young man is guilty of absolutely nothing. He carried a lawful weapon to the area that he was involved in the shooting. He did not go there with a premeditated idea of shooting anyone. He went there to protect people. And now we find out today that there is a strong possibility that there'll be a mistrial because the prosecution failed to give the defense some evidence that may in some way sway the jury with regard to what they would decide. This has been a political show from day one, folks. The young man should have never been indicted. Look, I agree there should be investigations. And then after the investigation, you conclude based on evidence whether a person should be indicted or not. But it's politics, folks. It's politics. I hope and pray that this young man is found not guilty and he can move on with his life. Very sad, very, very sad circumstances there, folks. You know what astonishes me? I don't hear the mainstream media talking about the burning of buildings, the people that went into that neighborhood. Well, let's put it this way, any city or neighborhood, burning buildings, firebombing police cars, tearing down police stations. You know, we all saw that, right? You hear about any indictments? You hear about anybody being investigated? You hear about anybody going to jail? No. Why? Because we have taken every single incident that occurs in this country that is, in my view now, justified and that involves conservatives. They've taken that and made that into a political weapon that the DOJ uses against these people. Tell me, if you could prove me different, folks, then you know what, I'll stand corrected. But I'll tell you, to see what's going on in our criminal justice system as a result of the Democrat Socialist / Communist Party taking over is a tragedy. Well, let's just pray and hope that the jury comes back with a not guilty verdict. Now, there's one thing I want to make you aware of, folks, and I picked this up during the prosecution summation. Throughout the trial, by the way, the prosecution continued to use the phrase, now listen to this one, what would a reasonable person do under such circumstances? What would a reasonable person do under such circumstances? What circumstances? How about this, people, my friends, Romans and countrymen? What would a reasonable person do if a individual in a very chaotic scene pointed a gun at you? It is alleged, it is said, and I believe there was testimony that somebody, it could be one of the people that Rittenhouse shot, pointed a gun at him, and he was defending himself. So what would a reasonable person do? That reasonable person would use the weapon they have legally to defend themselves. What would a reasonable person do when I think a bag or something was thrown at him? My goodness, who would know what's in the bag? What would a reasonable person do when somebody takes your legal gun and grabs it? What would you do? You would defend yourself. I heard someone say, take Mr. Rittenhouse away from the scene and replace him with a police officer. What do you think a cop would do, folks? Think about that. You think the cop would stand there and say, well, please, I give up, take my gun? No, that police officer would use deadly force. So this individual, this young man, this 17-year-old, in my view, had every single right to use deadly force. He was attacked. He's the victim. But unfortunately, we have a prosecutor, in my view, has become a political pawn for someone or some agenda. And I hope that this prosecutor will be dealt with by the judiciary review boards after this is all over. And my hat's off to the judge. Obviously, he's not tolerating any nonsense. He's not tolerating politics. That judge is pretty good at what he's doing. I hope they declare mistrial. I hope they do. But we'll see. Now, let's get to some of the other topics that are affecting us. You all know I've been involved in law enforcement, police officer, retired as a police lieutenant for 38 years. I worked with the FBI and all kinds of county and state police organizations. In fact, you all know that I worked as a military intelligence officer at the FBI National Joint Terrorism Task Force. So I would say I've got some experience with regard on how law enforcement works and who should be investigated and what tools are used to investigate criminal acts. So here we go, folks. In my view, the DOJ has weaponized the FBI to do what? To do what, folks? To go after parents exercising their First Amendment rights at school board meetings. They have taken, the DOJ and the FBI have taken the KGB playbook to go after American citizens who have the right of free speech. I was on a school board, folks. I was actually elected to a school board in 2008 before I got elected to the city council for 2 terms. I was a school board member, and we had parents come to meetings, and some of them are very animated, passionate about their children. This is what it's all about. Parents don't come to a school board meeting to appease or to support a political agenda. They come because they care about their children. They want to make sure that their children are being taught properly and cared for properly when they're in school. I have never, in the years I've been on a school board, ever even thought of a parent being prosecuted or investigated by the local police, let alone the FBI. They have every right to come. Every right to come. They could scream, they could yell, they could do whatever. And if folks, now here's the rub. If an individual got up there and threatened a board member, and that board member felt that they were pretty much in fear of their life, now think about what I'm saying, then you know what you do? You don't call the FBI. You call the local police, they make a police report, and they don't respond to the scene and handcuff the parent. You make a police report, and then they'll investigate. Sometimes parents will say things, and school board members will say things that they should not say. But it doesn't rise to the level of making parents, as the DOJ has, terrorists. When I worked at the FBI National Joint Terrorism Task Force, we analyzed data, intelligence, and information on terrorists, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and other terrorists around the world. Do you know, folks, through all those investigations, through all the paperwork that came across my desk, I have never seen where a parent of a child in school attending a board meeting would be classified as a terrorist. But this administration, this socialist/communist agendarized administration, wants to classify parents who allegedly threaten, and I'll get into that in a minute, school board members as domestic terrorists. That happens in the former Soviet Union. That happens in today's China. That happens in communist countries all around the world, what's left of them. Should never happen in the United States of America. Now, who calls you or who classifies you? Who says that you're a terrorist? Well, nobody can legally call you a terrorist. Of course, I could call you a terrorist, but that doesn't rise to the level where the FBI comes in with the arm of the federal government. Folks, you know what that is? Bullying and intimidation. I liken it unto political officers in the former Soviet Union who go to meetings. They go to city council meetings, school board meetings. They go to all kinds of meetings in the former Soviet Union. And they're also in the ranks of the military and the police to do what? Spy on you. To actually spy on you. That's what they did back then. in the Soviet Union. And we see this now creeping upon our country. You know, I always, when I tweet things out, communism on the march, and we give some facts. This is communism on the march. Folks, a long time ago, think about this, when the first assaults on the Second Amendment took place in this country, I remember many of us were warning the American people that didn't want to get involved for one reason or another in fighting for the right to bear arms. I remember sharing on a lot of news networks that this is the beginning. They're going to come for the weapons. Then they're going to come for what? Our free speech. And then they're going to come for what? Our religion. Now, let's talk about that for a minute. The Biden administration wants to dismiss, repeal, whatever the word you want to use, some free speech issues and some executive orders that President Trump actually signed to protect the right to worship, to protect religious institutions. Could you imagine? All President Trump wanted to do was give religious institutions and your right and my right to worship more protection. But now the Biden administration is seeing that differently. Think about it, folks. The right to bear arms, the right to free speech. There's your school board meetings with parents voicing their views to protect their children. And now they're coming after our right to worship the religion that we so believe. So all this is now creeping upon us. And I urge you, encourage you, and we've done this all along, get involved. Please get involved. We're watching the dismantling of a free society. Look, folks, not only are they doing those things to us with regard to our amendments, but what about the economy, folks? Think about this. I'm sure you've been in places where you can't find people who are working. My wife and I walked into a Macy's last week trying to purchase something. I'm looking around and there's nobody working. Look for salesmen, saleswomen, nobody working. Looking for cashiers, nobody's working. You go down an aisle, you go down this aisle, clothes thrown all over the place, garbage on floors. Macy's, folks. Macy's, a premier institution as far as I'm concerned, because I was brought up in Brooklyn, New York, and years ago, Macy's was the place to go. In my view, it's the place not to go. And any of you CEOs and execs from Macy's watching, I know through LinkedIn and a lot of CEOs and corporate execs watch our broadcast. I want to tell you something. You men and women who are CEOs and if you will, big shots in these companies, many of your corporations supported the people that are in office now. And those people who support a socialist communist agenda are coming for you. I said that all along. You think that you did them a favor because they're coming for us conservatives, because they're coming for us who believe in the God and country ethos, who believe in Judeo-Christian values? Oh yeah, we know they're coming for us and we're ready. We're ready because we're fighting. But are you ready? They're coming for you. I talked to a very, very wealthy individual last week who owns a major corporation here in the United States. And that individual shared with me that they're very concerned. And they're not Democrat or Republican, they're an independent. They said they're very, very concerned. In fact, it was a woman, all right, who happens to be one of the few women in America who are in the upper echelon of corporate America. And she said to me, she's very concerned that the Biden administration is going to literally cripple her company and companies like hers. So when I ask, what do you mean cripple? It's the tax, folks, the corporate tax. You know, I've always said, and I've been criticized for this at times, that, listen, I don't have a problem with corporations. Look, you want to get rich, God bless you. I'm not jealous of you. Make all the money you want. This is what America's all about. But when I hear people cheering that Biden is going to hit the corporations with high taxes, you know what I'm hearing? What this woman corporate leader told me last week. I'm hearing people being laid off, people going on unemployment, people who cannot live a decent quality of life because they can't pay for food. This is what this administration has done and will continue to do, because those of you who are corporate leaders, you're just going, not all of you, but many of you, too many of you, maybe the NBA, Major League Baseball, the NFL, to mention a few. All right. And there are some others, maybe Amazon. I don't know. But do some research, folks. We'll find out who they are. But you have supported the very people that are going to take your legs out from under you. They're going to go after your money, not mine. I'm not wealthy. And I'm sure most of the people watching our broadcast, we're all in the same boat. We're just middle-class Americans doing our job to save America. But those of you who have all the money, and those of you who are, as my mother used to say years ago, filthy rich, they're coming for you. I don't want to see you hurt, because you're the people, you're the individuals who have employed thousands upon thousands and thousands of Americans. I got no beef with you. Keep them employed. Give them a decent wage. But you see, the handouts, not the helping hands, but the handouts of the Biden administration, they're not helping America. They're hurting America. So, folks, like I said, why wasn't there anybody in Macy's when I walked in there? My wife and I walked into a Bed & Beyond in New Jersey a couple of weeks ago. We couldn't find the cashier. Where's the cashier? Well, we don't have any. Well, how do you cash stuff out? Go to that machine. And on and on and on and on and on. So the socialist communist agenda, the playbook of Marx, Lenin, and Stalin has always been: take the people's weapons away, take the people's religion away, take the people's right to free speech away, and then take their economic value away. And how do they do that, folks? They give it all away. They give all the money away. The government gives all the money away to all of the people who don't want to work, and those people become enslaved to the government. That's how socialism and that's how communism works. I've said over and over and over again, folks, that, we had a problem, a dreadful, dark history of America, and that was slavery. Okay? And I'm glad it was put in the ash bin of history. No one should be a slave. But no one today should be an economic slave to the government, because maybe there's not physical change there, but there are economic change that do a lot of damage to people. And I'm sure you get what I'm saying. So we need to stand together. All of us, no matter what race, color, or creed we are, we need to stand together. Hold on 1 minute, folks. A little bit of a machine went on here. I'm going to turn it off. All right, folks, that was interfering with my ability to listen to what I was saying, so I want to make sure it didn't hinder your ability to listen. All right, so here we have the FBI, all right, now being weaponized by the DOJ to go after parents. And that's just part and parcel of the stages that I just shared with you regarding taking our rights away. So it's simple, folks. If a school board member feels threatened, you call the local police. Let the local police, the county prosecutor take care of it. No need for the FBI. Listen, we've got enough problems in this country with terrorist organizations, not with parents, and I'll get into that in a minute. Now, a topic that has come up, and I have no problems addressing it, because frankly, whatever people think of me, want to say about me, you go right ahead. The politics of personal destruction. Folks, I just need to share with you that there are too many people running for office that resort to the politics of personal destruction. What do I mean by that? Character assassination. Imagine, and there are candidates who I know, and I've got to tell you, very disappointed in some candidates, very disappointed, who have attacked individuals' character. They don't even know who these people are. Folks, they have never sat down, some of the people that are on the attack have never sat down and looked into the person they're attacking eyeball to eyeball. Now, policy, yeah, go after policy. Do what you got to do, address policy, go after that. But to denigrate another human being who they don't know, well, there was somebody that was attacked that I happen to know. And I've been watching, one attack after another. First, the attack on the person's character, then the attack on the person's religious beliefs, and on and on and on. Well, I just happened to, at a meeting that I had a few days ago, was introduced to the person who was being attacked. And I've got to tell you, folks, I was impressed with this individual. I'm not going to name names right now. I will down the road, because then I'll be accused of attacking the attacker. I'm not going to do that, but because I want to bring out an example. I found out this person that was under attack by people who never even sat down with him, never even sat down and had a discussion with him, never looked at him in his eyeballs to learn about him and his background. I found out that this person, just by short discussion, very compassionate, loving of mankind, did a lot of good things. And you know what? Had a past, like I had a past, like all of you had a past. To attack a person because of some of the maybe decisions they made in the past for whatever reasons we don't know, to attack a person's character, to attack a person who has a wife, children, family, for what reason? For political reasons? My, political reasons? Now, you go after individuals that have committed crimes or who have policy differences with us, that's fine. I say go to it. I would go to it, folks, and I would make no bones about it. I'll tell you what I'm talking about, folks, without mentioning names. I'm talking about, and I can talk about this because I am a Republican, I'm talking about Republicans. I'm talking about Republican candidates who go out of their way and attack people. They go after their character, and they go after all sorts of other things. You know, there was a reason why Ronald Reagan created that 11th commandment in the Republican Party: thou shalt not criticize other Republicans. And the reason was this, folks. Sooner or later in a Republican primary, somebody's going to win. And you know what? It's usually the person who is being attacked by other Republicans. And you know what the Democrats do? They take all of those attack ads. They take all of the verbiage that the other Republican used against the nominee, and they go and they attempt to destroy that person, the person that the people selected to run against the Democrats. Ronald Reagan was a classy guy. Jack Ciattarelli here in New Jersey, I'll tell you, no matter what you think of him, classy guy. I happen to think the guy's a wonderful leader. I think Reagan was a wonderful leader. Now, one might say, well, but you know, there, Lieutenant Ronald Reagan went on the attack. I'm sorry, Donald Trump went on the attack a lot. Folks, I'm going to share something with you. Look at Trump's attacks. He's a counterpuncher. I worked in his campaign. I worked in his advisory board. Every place I went, rallies or whatever, I've got to tell you. Say what you want to say about Trump, his tweets, this and that, but he never initiated any attacks on people in an election unless he was attacked. That's why they call him the counterpuncher. To me, when a person resorts to character assassination, especially if they're out of the gate, acts of desperation. Folks, acts of desperation. That's not what we want in the Republican Party. I've been around, folks. Been around longer than a lot of these people that are running for office. And I've been around recently. I've been to Dallas. I've been to Florida. I've been to New York State. Been all over, and all over the state of New Jersey recently. And I'm learning that finally grassroots America is indeed waking up to the fact that they're tired. They're tired of the personal attacks. They're tired of character assassination. They want candidates. They want candidates who are going to talk policy, who are going to address the Democrat, socialist, communists. They are the opposition. They're the ones we need to go after. They're the ones we need to completely eliminate from the political process. They're the ones hurting America. So there are people who feel it's okay. They feel, look, I've gotten some emails about, well, maybe these people should be attacked. Maybe their past should be questioned. Folks, you want to question somebody's past? Maybe you should look my past up, okay? And I say that for this reason. We forget. Don't we forget something, folks? Don't we forget that there is a scripture in the Bible, right? Now, we're the party, the God and Country Party, right? We're the party that stands on the Constitution and many, many scriptures written in the Bible. Doesn't that book say, he who has not sinned, let him cast the first stone. Doesn't it say that? I've got a question for the critics, for those who go after somebody's character, who goes after somebody's background. I've got a question for you. My question is this. Do you know anything about the background of these people who you're attacking? The hardships, the difficulties, the problems they faced maybe as a young man or a young woman? You know, I've got to tell you something, folks. Most of us, I'll say me, I was brought up in a poor neighborhood in Brooklyn, New York. And I wasn't the kindest guy, all right? I hung around with a lot of tough people, all right? I thank God that I was able to get straightened out. You know when I got straightened out, folks? When I came face to face with a drill sergeant in the United States military. Even in school, let me tell you, I wasn't the best and the brightest. And there are a lot of things in life that as I look back and I say, well, man, I wish I would have made a better decision than I made at that point in time that could have sent me off the rails. But people prayed for me, right? Your mom, your dad, your relatives, your grandmothers, grandfathers, families pray for you. And somehow, some way, their prayers are answered and you're put into a direction where you're going to straighten out. I've seen people on the internet criticize other candidates, talking about, well, maybe they should stop finding themselves and find a way to do something else. Folks, I'm going to tell you something. It took me a long time to find out where I was going on a journey. It took me a long time to find myself, if you will. And I found myself, all right, for lack of a better illustration, when I found Christ. Or let's put it this way, when Christ found me. Now, that was my revelation. Someone else may have another revelation, unlike mine. But are we going to become the party that just attacks people to win an election? That's not America first, folks. That's putting America last. That's putting the character of our country last. That's putting integrity last. Those are acts of desperation and very revealing acts of anger. And folks, I got to tell you something. I can't not be part of that, and I will not be part of that, and I will support no one who goes down that road. So that's the politics of personal destruction. There was a book that I'll refer to all of you. I do a lot of reading, and I read a book that was referred to me by a Democrat who I have nice conversations with, civil conversations with. It's called Team of Rivals. It was about Abraham Lincoln on how he under attack, day in and day out, his inability to speak under attack, his inability to write under attack. I mean, Lincoln was under attack from all sorts of people, but especially from Republicans in his time. That's right. He would be called a rhino today because what he did, and this goes to the point of Team of Rivals, he found a way to sit down with his rivals, to bring them to the table and to talk to them about what was important to all of them, and that was the survival of a nation. That's what Ronald Reagan did with Tip O'Neill. And I've got to tell you, folks, to his credit, that's what Donald Trump did with Vladimir Putin, with President Xi, with all the world leaders. These are men, and there are a lot of women. I'll mention some of them. Margaret Thatcher, Condoleezza Rice. I mean, these are two of many leaders who, when you read about, were strong. They were tough. Margaret Thatcher, the Iron Lady, because she knew how to sit down and have discussions without attacking people from your own party. Winston Churchill, another great leader. Even FDR. Listen, Franklin Roosevelt, there's no doubt about it. He led us through World War II. He's a Democrat. He did a lot of things with regard to policies that I disagree with. But man, I'll tell you, I would never on earth. And in fact, I'll put it this way. I ran for several offices. I ran for school board one. I ran for city council twice. I believe in term limits. I walked away. I ran for freeholder and lost. I ran for governor and lost. Who knows? Maybe I'll run again in the future. But I'll tell you one thing about this politics of personal destruction. I have never and will never go negative, never now, in the past, or in the future, if I ever plan to run for office, go negative and enter into the realm of character assassination. And I could prove it. One time that I'll bring to your attention of many. I was running for office and against a strong Democrat. And we were having a discussion publicly with a reporter being a moderator. 200, 300 people there. And forgive me if you heard this story before, but it's important to the point. And so we're talking about policies back and forth. Democrat said his, I said mine, had a little bit of a debate regarding what road we should go down. Suddenly, here you go, folks. The reporter turns to me in front of these 200 people, says, Mr. Rogers, Lieutenant Rogers, would you please share with this audience what fault you find with your opponent? Tell us something negative about him that they need to know. Folks, I sat back and I actually did this. I said, well, why don't I tell you something good about him? Why don't I tell you that he's a good guy, that he's a good family man, he's a good father, he's a good husband, and my hat's off to him for putting his hat in the ring, wanting to dedicate his time for the survival of the state and the country. There's my answer. Folks, the entire audience, you could hear a pin drop. The host didn't know what to say. And so the question never went to him. Over and done with. Just like that. You see, so, and that individual and I became great friends. Very, very good friends. So you see, sometimes you're trapped into a situation, but it speaks to the character of the person being put on the spot. So when a person, candidate, political office holder, or whatever, goes down a road to get elected to what, for goodness sakes? To get elected to an office that is temporary, by the way, and goes on the attack and goes after a person's background, their childhood, maybe they made misjudgments, but straighten their lives out. To do that, it speaks a lot to the character of the person who's doing the attacking. And I'm sure, based on what I see here, many of you agree. Respect. Person here, Bonnie. Respect speaks volumes for sure. And boy, Bonnie, you hit the nail on the head. Listen to this, folks. This is really good. I like this idea of you being able to post things. God knows the heart. King David, think about this. I've studied him extensively. King David in the Bible was probably the worst guy on earth that you would ever imagine that God would bless and make him a king. Last guy on earth. But what does the Bible say after King David had a woman's husband murdered so that he could commit adultery with her, who had slain people left and right, who did all sorts of the most ungodliest things? Yet God said he was a man after God's own heart. Bonnie, my hat's off to you. So let's think about that, folks. Maybe sometimes we need to ask God to reveal to us what's really in a man or woman's heart when they're running for office. So that's the politics of personal destruction. And finally, folks, I've said that we're going to just try to keep these broadcasts to a half hour. Finally, I've said all along, and I will continue to say this every broadcast, Joe Biden, his administration, are going to be dragging us into a war that we can't win. There are 100,000 troops now on the Ukrainian border. I'm sure many of you saw the footage of what's happening in Poland now with regard to Belarus. There's no doubt in my mind Russia may get involved in that conflict. President Xi has already made it very clear to Joe Biden, hands off of Taiwan. And folks, I can't imagine what's going to trigger this off. Can't imagine. But my assessment is that we're not going to get into an armed conflict with China. It's going to be Russia. Because Joe Biden can't keep his finger out of the eye of Vladimir Putin. Joe Biden is not dealing with an individual who's going to back down. Joe Biden is dealing with the former director of the Soviet Union KGB, a ruthless individual who will not tolerate, or who will tolerate only so much before he pulls the trigger. So, are you willing to send your child to Ukraine? You're hearing this from a military commander, retired military commander. I'm not willing to do that, folks. I lived In fact, I was in the military during the Vietnam War. I've seen what that did to this country because we went into that war not to win. That was a political war. And some of these wars that are cropping up, whether it be Russia and Ukraine or Belarus and Poland, I think it's about time, you know what? Let the NATO countries handle that. Enough American blood has been spilled on the face of this earth, on real estate on this globe, all over the place. Enough American blood has been spilled. And it is high time that we take a stand as a country and say, unless our national security is directly threatened, we don't need to send ground troops anywhere. At least that's my position now. Maybe it will be something of a different approach later if I see things that require us to get involved in a war, but not now. If you don't learn from history, history is bound to repeat itself. So my vote now is, you know what? Let's be careful before we commit troops anywhere. I don't want to end up in another 10, 15-year war like we did in Vietnam, 15, 20-year war in Afghanistan, and thousands upon thousands of veterans, young men and women, our heroes who defend this country, killed and wounded. I don't want to see that happen again. And it's my job as an individual who's been able to influence a lot of people via the political process. It's my job to call it as it is. That's it, folks. It's kind of nice tonight. I'm kind of low key, but I'm sure to the point. And so please, folks, I'm going to ask you to do a few things. One is, please really think about what I said regarding the politics of personal destruction. If you're supporting a candidate going down that road, I'm not going to tell you not to support that candidate, but I'm going to tell you to call them out, not publicly. Maybe you give them a call, give them a little message, say, look, we don't want to go down that road. That's not us. You got to be dignified. Your character's got to be somewhat above those who make a living out of trying to destroy other people's lives, trying to destroy their character. Aren't we going to reach a level at some point where we're going to put an end to all the incivility? There's a lot going on, folks, with regard to the lack of civil discussion. We know that. The problem is, when I say we, I'm talking about those of us who are in leadership positions. The problem is not many of those people in leadership positions want to come out and talk about that for whatever reason. So what we need to do is to take a deep breath, step back. The whole world is watching. Let me share this with you in closing. The whole world is watching. The whole world, folks. People who want to be set free of communism, of socialism, of dictatorships, of tyrants, they're watching how we work through our problems. And if they continuously see us yelling at each other, screaming at each other, denigrating each other, and on and on and on, I've got to tell you, folks, it's going to have very, very negative impact on them. And our children, our grandchildren. The one thing I could walk away with, and I proudly say this, not a bragging way, but I do proudly say this, that my children and grandchildren, especially my children, they're old enough now, have heard from people from both sides of the aisle, because my son told me this a couple of times, and my daughter actually told me some time ago, that our campaigns that we ran will be known for being campaigns of dignity, of honor, and of good character. Why, folks? I never took things personal, and I never, ever went after another person's family, religion, race, character, background. Never did that. Because I knew what Reagan knew. It was time to move forward. It was time not to tell people how bad the other guy is or gal is, but to tell them how good things will be when I'm elected to office or whoever. That's the message we need to get to the American people. So that's it, folks. So listen, here's what we've got. You want to get involved? Well, we sent out last week close to 100, if you will, maybe a little lower than 100, little PDF files that share with you how you could get involved, okay? It's called Operation Red Storm Rising. Copy of yours, it's free. Absolutely free, folks. We don't charge for things like this when we're on the air, okay? Operation Red Storm Rising, 2 or 3 page PDF file. We'll send it to you. It'll help you. Actually, it's a guide. It's a do-it-yourself guide to get involved from local school board level all the way up to the White House. You could even never leave your home to get involved. Now, so if you see it says now is our time, Well, if you go to our website, campaignforamerica.com, we have a contact tab. Click that, put your email, and put your name if you want. You don't have to put anything else. So by the way, you're not going to get a solicitation from us. We don't believe in that. We do what we do because we love our country. How about that? That's it, folks. I can't think of anything else. I thank you all for tuning in. Please share this video, share this information that we love to share with you. And until next Wednesday, let's see, isn't that the day before Thanksgiving? It probably won't be on because you'll all be cooking them turkeys and getting ready to thank God for what he has done for us. So let me say this to you now. Happy Thanksgiving to you all. Just remember this. We live in a great country. We've always lived in a great country. No matter what has been thrown at us since 1776, we are still standing. America still stands. Old Glory still flies over buildings across this country and, by the way, across buildings in other countries. And we're going to continue to make sure Old Glory still flies. Why? Never forget this. The God above, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, our Lord Jesus Christ, the Holy Spirit has put his arms, wrapped his arms around America since 1776. We are indeed a country that believes and worships God Almighty. Fear not, for I am with thee, says the Lord. Be not afraid, for I am thy God. Thank you, folks. Have a great and happy Thanksgiving. Now, 6:30 p.m., not next Wednesday, but the Wednesday after Thanksgiving. We'll see you then. Thank you. God bless you. God bless America. Thank you for joining me. And on behalf of my co-host, John McCain, also, happy Thanksgiving.